Right here we have a Pitts S1C. This airplane was built in 1987 by a gentleman named Paul Spicer. It's got an O320 in it, so it's got a pressure carburetor in it, and anyone that's ever dealt with a pressure carburetor knows how big of a nightmare that is. So I try to learn a little bit about it, but it's probably one of the most confusing things that I've ever tried to learn.
And how many horsepower is it?
It's a 160 horsepower, so it's not a whole lot of bark, but you know, if you look at Bob Hoover, who goes and does aerobatics with his Strike Commander all shut down, you don't need a lot of horsepower. You can make it work. So 150 horsepower Lycoming engine. It's got this fixed pitch prop up front. It's got bungee gear down here, so not a spring gear. So if you look actually way inside, and we'll get to it a little bit earlier, there's bungees that are on the inside, which really help for it. It depends on what your preference is. This is a little bit more of a maintenance gear versus the spring gear. But if you have spring gear, which a lot of airplanes do, they're a little bit, they say they're a little bit easier to land, but landing to pits in general is pretty difficult. So anyway, a lot of fun. Keep on walking over here. We've got, you know, our regular guide wires and stuff that run across over here to kind of help keep the wings together. And then one thing that I think is really interesting about this airplane is the wing and the design of the wing. So if we come over here on this side, most S1Cs have what you call a flat bottom wing, and it has one long aileron just on the bottom, and the top has nothing up here. So one long aileron on the bottom and a flat bottom wing. Now this is not original S1C, hence it's why it's an experimental, and it wasn't built by Curtis Pitts, who was the designer of the Pitts. This is built in the garage by, like I said, Paul Spicer. So anyway, it's got an S1C frame to it, but it's got the design of an S1S wing. Now if you look at it over here, you have a symmetrical wing, which is called a round wing. So the top and the bottom have the same camber. Which basically allows the airplane to fly upside down and right side up, and it doesn't care. It doesn't care if it's upside down, right side up, or whatever. And the interesting thing is it has the same angle of incidence from the top and the bottom wing, which basically just means if you were to draw an imaginary line from the tail to the spinner, and then a chord line from the trailing edge to the leading edge, the top and the bottom wings have the same angle of incidence. So the top wing will always stall first, which makes it a really good aerobatic airplane. Another interesting thing about this airplane is the wing, again, is made out of completely wood. So it's wood, ribs and spars, ribs. And then it's got fabric all the way through. And we've got this slave strut that keeps these ailerons connected. And so keep walking back here. Fabric back here. All this is made out of fabric. You got a little bit inspection panel right here that makes it really easy for pre-flight and stuff like that. And then you got this ginormous rudder back here. If you look at the length of this airplane, it's not very long. And it only weighs about 700 pounds, which is super light. No flaps. So when you're coming in to land this airplane, I'm about over the numbers in this airplane, probably about 100 to 110 miles an hour, something like that. So coming in really fast, no flaps. And then when you set this thing down, it likes to do the little bit of dance and stuff. And I don't want to call it a squirrely airplane, but it is a squirrely airplane. I think the better way to call it is that it does exactly what you tell the airplane to do. If you put right rudder in, it's gonna go right. You put left rudder in, it's gonna go left. And that's what the difficult part is you know, just how sensitive this airplane really is. If you come over here and you look on the inside, there's not a whole lot going on. There's airspeed, vertical speed, altimeter, you got an RPM, and you got a G meter, and then oil pressure and oil temperature. Got a flight line, a radio system down there, so we do have an alternator in here. It does have electrical system, so it'll start up without having to hand prop it or anything. One thing you can look at back here is we've got a turtle deck. So if you are taking this thing anywhere, you can put just about like 2-pound backpack back there. If you look up top over here, we've got a fuel tank up top and then one right here in the nose. So the nose holds 18 gallons, the top holds about 3 gallons. And my limitation in this thing is an 1.5 hour flight. Anything longer than that, I want to get out of this airplane, and plus it needs fuel. So it only holds about 21 gallons. I'm not a very tall person, so when I'm sitting in here and my knees are, you know, kind of hunched up, it's not a very long canopy or fuselage. So anyone that's, you know, 6 foot, anything like that, would not be able to fit in this airplane. They do have stretched models and stuff. Like I said, this was off an S1C. When they made the S1Ss and stuff like that, they made the fuselage a little bit longer for someone a little bit larger to be able to fit in it. So another interesting thing about this airplane specifically, it started its life as an open canopy concept. So no canopy, just like this, sat like this, and you sat in here and you put the little helmet on and a little Snoopy guy flying around. And flying up here in Prescott, I didn't really like it. It was cold, and I wanted to try to get something to cover me up. So we put this canopy on. If you look closely, these are drawer rails off a drawer. And then we kind of just fabbed up the sheet metal, put a little bit of a cable right here that has a little bit of a claw right here that drops down on this side. So when you push it forward, it locks down into place, and then when you want to get out of it, you just pull on this little deal right here, and it brings those claws up, and then you can slide it right back. So another interesting thing is we get to have some fun with a canopy now.
Cool.
So just your basic rudder pulleys, you got your cables back there, you've got your push rods and stuff all over here. Not a whole lot going on this airplane, which is super nice. It makes it fairly simple to work on. It's just, flight surfaces, you've got a motor and, some controls, and that's really all there is to it. So like I said, I really enjoy flying this airplane. I've had it probably for about 3 years. And again, it's not a cross-country airplane. You take it outside of the pattern, you go upside down, have some fun, and come on back. We originally bought this airplane to race in Reno, and it has raced in Reno. And then we actually acquired another one that was a little bit faster. Since this one's just 160 horse fixed pitch, it doesn't perform great, but hey, it makes the race, and that's all that really matters. And it will be going to Roswell this year. And me and my dad will be racing together, which will be a lot of fun. It's got the Christian inverted oil system in there, so hang out upside down as long as you want. Fuel, oil, all that stuff. Another interesting thing about this airplane was there's an antenna on the bottom of the airplane right there that I originally installed. So when I was ferrying this airplane from Northern California down here, we had a little bit of a radio issue where something was grounding out. We were having, anytime I'd key up the mic, it would just be this loud squelch. So when I came here, tower, of course, wasn't super happy with that. And then got on the ground, had Zulu look at it, and the original antenna is kind of interesting. And I'll show you. So if you look, right, and you can kind of get in here, this little black thing that wraps all the way around the bottom of this right here, it was the original antenna. So it didn't work very well. Anyway, so we had them install this one on the bottom right here. And I went out, was gonna test fly it, everything's working real good. Taxiing down, tower at ground can hear me, lining up on the runway, and all of a sudden I'm sitting on the runway for 30 seconds and 60 seconds. I'm like, uh-oh, this isn't good. And then I look up and tower's hitting me with the light gun signal, take off. And I'm like, uh-oh. So I took off anyway, ended up being no big deal. Came back around and landed and figured out the issue. So it's never happened to me again. Another interesting thing about this airplane is it's no transponder, no ADS-B, nothing. So with that, I fly with this little spot deal. So it tracks you. If you have any sort of emergency, you can press the button and send search and rescue with you. And being around Prescott, it's a pretty busy airport, so, and having no transponder, nothing, is sometimes a little bit, try to find the right time to fly the airplane, because if, Riddle and stuff's out here, it can be a little bit of a, tower can be a little stressed, which I get, even for me too. Another thing about this is the visibility. So my head sits probably right here, my top of my head sits right about here, and you look straight out. And if you're on a 3, 4, 5 mile final, something like that, and you're not coming in at an angle, you'll lose sight of the runway completely. So the way to land this thing is usually be coming in at an angle and staying high. So you'll come in real high, try to come in tight, try to do like a short approach if you can every time, and then you'll just slip it down. That way you can have sight of the runway the whole time. And then as you're coming over the top of the numbers, you straighten it out and hold it. And whether you wheel land it or 3-point it, any landing in this thing is a good one.